An Israeli airstrike kills 5 Palestinians and injures others in eastern Qnews. WHO Director General warns of an imminent famine in northern Gaza. And an Israeli airstrike on Lebanon's Stair kills 7 and injures 46 others. It's almost 8 p.m. Cairo local time, and you're now watching Q News. We start with the latest developments in Gaza. Five Palestinians have been killed, several others injured this evening in an Israeli airstrike that targeted a tent sheltering displaced families in the town of Abasan al-Kabira, located east of Khan Yunis. Earlier, health authorities have reported that more than 14 Palestinians have been killed and others have been injured in Israeli shelling of Gaza cities of Khan Yunis since last night. 5 Palestinians have been killed and others have been injured in an airstrike in an Israeli airstrike on a home in the Jabalia refugee camp in the northern Gaza as the wide-scale Israeli onslaught on the region entered its 35th consecutive day. Medical sources reported that the occupation forces killed 25 Palestinians in less than 24 hours, including 16 in northern Gaza. They also said that an occupation drone opened fire on citizens in Al-Basa area in Deir al-Balah and struck a tent housing displaced people. At least 11 Palestinians have been killed and several others have been injured in the Israeli bombing of the Shuja'iyya neighborhood east of Gaza City. Palestinian media reported that Israeli artillery also shelled Beit Hanun in the northeast of the Gaza Strip and raided a building in the Shabura camp in Rafah to the south. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom has warned of an imminent famine in the northern Gaza. He urged immediate humanitarian aid, especially food and medicine, to prevent severe malnutrition. A report by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Famine Review Committee confirmed a high famine risk, calling for urgent action from all involved parties to address the rapidly deteriorating humanitarian crisis. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza intensifies as Israeli airstrikes and shelling wreak havoc on the civilians and critical infrastructure.
In Gaza, the humanitarian crisis worsens amid relentless airstrikes and heavy shelling, with severe impacts on civilians and essential infrastructure. Israeli occupation forces have intensified military aggressions, targeting multiple sites across Gaza City and central areas, resulting in widespread destruction to homes, hospitals, and schools. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, today's death toll has surged, with over 100 fatalities, including children and elderly residents. Hospitals are operating beyond capacity, struggling with dwindling supplies, electricity, and clean water, placing thousands of lives at risk. Medical personnel describe this as the worst crisis they have faced, with patients being treated in corridors and temporary shelters. Due to power shortages, hospitals are dependent on generators, now critically low on fuel, sparking fears about sustaining life-saving care in the coming days. International organizations, including the United Nations, are calling for an immediate ceasefire, emphasizing the need to protect civilians. Calls for humanitarian aid corridors have increased as essential supplies remain blocked, heightening the threat of starvation and disease. Palestinian officials warn that ongoing strikes are pushing Gaza toward an irreversible humanitarian catastrophe. As another night looms, civilians await a breakthrough to end the violence and bring relief to those suffering on the ground.
Right, welcome back. And for more analysis, we now move to Mark in our newsroom. To you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mona. And to talk more about the situation in Gaza after the latest statements by the WHO, we are joined from Deir el-Balah by the Palestinian Non-Governmental Organizations Network Director, Amjad al-Shawa. Thank you very much for being on our bulletin. What is the humanitarian situation in northern Gaza right now?
Thank you. North Gaza, the situation is very critical due to the humanitarian catastrophe caused by the Israeli. First, the offensive daily attacks on the Palestinian civilians and civil premises as hospitals and the shelters, and the entire families were erased from the record during the 35 days of the Israeli mass attacks. And in the same time, denial of entry of the basic needs and materials and supplies to the north of Gaza, mainly food, medical items, and water. We are talking about severe food insecurity leading to famine, mainly among children, women, elders, patients, and the denial of access for patients and injured to reach the hospital, which is leading to a danger on their lives. At the same time that we are talking about in general in Gaza Strip, we are moving towards the critical moment that through the Israeli offensive since the starting of this war in Gaza, since the denial of access of the basic materials. Tens of bakeries, community kitchens stopped producing food, bread to the population, or became dependent on the humanitarian aid. We are talking about very limited quantities of humanitarian aid entering to the different areas of Gaza Strip, mainly to the Gaza, to the middle area, and to the north of Gaza Strip.
And what more could the international community be doing to save lives in Gaza?
We are, as civil society organization, in coordination with many of these international organizations, with UN agencies, in order to respond to these big needs that result from this Israeli destruction of the social-economic facilities, and the people became very dependent on the humanitarian aid. Israel is entering very limited quantities of aid, so our work is very difficult in order to deliver services and to access people and to help the populations who 92% of the population became or displaced from their homes, and we have 100,000 families who are staying in very poor tents, very damaged tents, and we are entering the winter time, and these tents cannot face cold or rain or on the same time water flooding, and we have very limited quantities of medical aid that can deliver to the patients and people who are injured due to the Israeli offensive. We are doing our best in order to reach with these services to people, but day by day our capacity became very limited, and we are warning that in the next few days we will have nothing to deliver to our people.
Now, of course, we're about to have a change of administration in Washington in January, but do you think there's anything the Biden administration could do to turn this situation around before he leaves office?
I doubt that on the Biden administration that we can witness any improvement on the issue of ceasefire or stop the Israeli offensive in the Palestinians, and at the same time the entry of the humanitarian to Gaza. Although that Blinken and Austin they send a clear message to the Israeli side, and they give them 1 month in order to release the humanitarian aid and to enter the needs to Gaza Strip. We witnessed during the last 13 months of the Israeli war that this bias and this double standards committed by the Biden administration. So waiting for the Trump administration, and we know clearly that Trump is supportive to the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and their policies. So we do hope that there will be switch on the American administration that leads to end the suffering and pressure Israel to respect the international law, the international humanitarian law, and the human rights principles. But we are also committed to the international community in order to have kind of justice to the victims. We have about 50,000 who were killed or disappeared, and about 105,000 were injured. The destruction of the infrastructure and the civil facilities in Gaza Strip caused by Israel and supported by the American weapons. So these things supposed to be accountable on the international courts and to give justice to these victims. 70% of them were children and women.
And what do you think that it is that the hospitals in Gaza are in the most need of right now?
The Israeli occupation forces destroyed most of the Gaza hospitals and made part of them as graveyards for the bodies of patients who were killed by the Israelis. And in the same time, they arrested so many hundreds of the medical team and destroyed these health infrastructures. So the tens of the Gaza clinics and hospitals out of the limit. We have very limited capacity of health facilities that need to be supported by medical teams and by medical equipment at the time that we are calling in order to send the needs for the medications and at the same time disposables in order to deal with the huge number of patients and people who are injured. Now, so many of these injured people were evacuated to these tents to continue the medical treatment, and why the NGOs are delivering the services with the limited capacity. So we need protection for these facilities. Today there was an attack on the Al-Aqsa hospital, the main hospital in the Middle area, and there were 2 people who were killed inside the hospital itself. Although these hospitals, according to international law, it's protected, and there is supposed to be kind of accountability towards these crimes against the humanity caused by Israel.
Thank you very much. It is a desperate situation. Amgad Oshawa, who is the Network Director of Palestinian Non-Governmental Organizations. Thank you very much for joining us. Back to you, Mona.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the analysis. And back to our bulletin, where the Israeli occupation forces have detained at least 18 Palestinians from the West Bank in the last 24 hours. Detentions occurred across several provinces, bringing the total number in the West Bank, including Jerusalem, to over 11,600 since the beginning of the ongoing war. Israeli occupation forces have carried out 4 massacres at the Gaza Strip over the past 48 hours, leaving at least 44 Palestinians dead and 81 others injured. Gaza health authorities confirmed that the death toll from the Israeli onslaught since October 7th has surpassed 43,550, with more than 102,760 people wounded. For the 8th time in 7 months, an Israeli strike has hit the courtyard of Al-Aqsa hospital in Deir al-Balah, killing at least 2 people and injuring many. Palestinian medical officials said that the strike hit tents, including one serving as a makeshift police point in the courtyard of the main hospital in central Gaza, while the hospital reported that the strike also destroyed neighboring tents sheltering displaced people. Gaza has been facing an escalating humanitarian crisis with thousands killed, severe injuries, widespread hunger, and medical shortages.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Plumes of smoke have been seen rising from the southern Lebanese village of Qnews, while explosions were heard near Majayoun, close to the border with Israel. At least 7 were killed and 46 others injured in an initial toll following Israel airstrike on Lebanon's coastal city of Tyre. Lebanon's health ministry said Israel's occupation military said it continues to operate in southern Lebanon to dismantle Hezbollah infrastructure. Local Lebanese media have reported a third Israeli raid on the Maisara neighborhood in Ansar. This followed additional strikes between Batula and Ain Bal in Majdal and Burj Qolwiya. 2 more raids targeted Khirbet Salim and Kardonin, accompanied by Israeli artillery shelling on the town of Qnews in Majayoun. Israeli airstrikes have destroyed 2 historic buildings in Nabatiyah in southern Lebanon. The home of former Minister Rafiq Shaheen, a significant landmark in Al Maidan, was reduced to rubble, burying decades of political history. Another strike targeted Kamal Daher's house, a recently restored heritage site that once hosted the South Lebanon Cultural Council. Earlier, an airstrike also destroyed a historic building near the ancient Baalbek Castle in eastern Lebanon. UN Deputy Spokesperson Candice Ardiel has said that the UN interim force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, has come under attack 40 times since September 30th, with 8 confirmed from the Israeli side. The UN force reported another Israeli assault on its position, saying that the Israeli occupation military's deliberate and direct destruction of its property was a flagrant violation of the international law. The Israeli occupation military denied any activity after UN forces contacted it to protest despite unification. The death toll from the Israeli attacks on Lebanon since October 8, 2023 has reached 3,117 with 13,888 injured. Lebanese sources reported that on Friday, Israeli airstrikes killed 12 people and injured 10 others in eastern and southern Lebanon. Military sources confirmed that the Israeli warplanes carried out 15 raids in the south and 4 in the east, causing multiple casualties. EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell has reassured Ukraine of Europe's unwavering support days after Donald Trump's election win caused uncertainty over its war effort. Borrell, the first EU official to visit Kiev since Trump's win, said that the purpose of his visit was to stress EU support for Ukraine as its war with Russia nears 1,000 days. The European Union has already provided 122 billion euros and $131 billion in military and financial support to Ukraine and trained about 60,000 Ukrainian soldiers, said Borrell, adding that the bloc aimed to reach 75,000 by the end of the winter.
Time is measured in human lives and the extent of destruction. Every day that we lose discussing about
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has thanked Finland for its defense and political support to Kiev. After a phone conversation with Finnish President Alexander Stubb, Zelensky emphasized Finland's efforts to pressure Russia into engaging in meaningful negotiations to end the war. Tens of thousands are expected to gather in Baku, Azerbaijan for COP29, the annual UN climate summit. The event serves as a platform for discussing solutions like energy policies and funding needs. What leaders attend, signaling commitments to the UNFCCC goals and holding countries accountable for past promises, though rationales behind each summit's discussions can be unclear. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned that humanity is failing to keep pace with worsening climate impacts as scientists project 2024 will be the hottest year on record. Guterres' remarks came with a UN report ahead of the COP29 climate talks, highlighting that in 2022, financial support to help developing countries adapt to climate's impacts reached just $28 billion. The United Nations Environment Programme's Adaptation Gap report notes this funding gap could reach up to $159 billion annually by 2023.
9% a year to 2030. Phase out fossil fuels fast and fairly and accelerate the renewables revolution.
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. Israeli airstrike kills 5 Palestinians, injures others in eastern Qnews. The WHO Director General warns of an imminent famine in northern Gaza. And an Israeli airstrike on Lebanon's Tyre kills 7 and injures 46 others. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.